Hello everyone, my name is Greg and I dev stuff. Welcome everyone to episode 7 of Stardew Valley-like game in Unity. In this episode we will implement Toolbar system. Let's clean our root folder. This episode is brought to you by generous support of people on Patreon. If you want to join them, link to my Patreon in the description. What is the toolbar? Toolbar is a collection of easily accessible items and tools. The toolbar is available to be set and configured by the player for his own convenience, so player will be able to switch items in his hand on the fly. So in the Stardew Valley, toolbar double as top line of the inventory. So if I remember correctly, it has 10 slots. We will have 12, because why not? But you can easily change it to match the Stardew Valley design in the case if you want to do so. Let's begin by drawing the toolbar UI on our screen. First we want to anchor it in the bottom middle of the screen. Rename it to be toolbar panel. Good, now resize the panel itself on the screen. Let's make it the height of the panel equals to the size of the item slot in the inventory, which is 48 pixels. And the width will be 48 multiplied by the amount of the slots on the toolbar, in our case 576. Good, now let's instantiate 12 inventory buttons on the screen. Good. Then, similar to the inventory panel, attach the grid layout to the panel and set it up to have 48 by 48 grid cells. Then attach inventory panel script to the panel. Fill in the required fields in the inspector. And let's launch the game. As you can see, it shows our inventory on the toolbar, but it throws an argument out of range exception at the end. So let's open the script to see why is this happening. Reason is because we're trying to use a count of slots in the inventory for loop. So if there is 36 slots but only 12 buttons, it will cause the error to be thrown. To fix this, change the condition to be both inventory slots and button count. This way, if there is only 12 buttons, it will not continue reading the inventory. Good. As you can see, if I press on the panel, it picks up the item. But we don't want to do this. Before we fix this, let's fix that our panel hides the icon of the item. Move the panel up in the hierarchy to fix this. Select the main character and create another new script called Toolbar Controller. Open the newly created script. We need to have some kind of variable which will let our toolbar controller know how many items we can have on the toolbar. Create a new serialized variable of type int called toolbar size. In our case, this number will be 12. Let's put it as a default value, and later on you can change it in the inspector because the value will be serialized. Then create a new integer variable called selected tool, which will be holding the actual ID of the currently selected and used tool. Now we want to have a scroll functionality, so we can scroll between slots on the toolbar. So in the update, if input delta scroll is not equal 0, check is it higher or lower than 0, and based on that add or retract 1 from selected tool. Let's test this by posting the selected tool to the log. Then we need to make sure that our selected tool is inside the limits of our tool build. Make sure that toolbar size is more than 0 in the inspector if you have some kind of problem on this step. Good. Now we want to highlight the selected tool on the toolbar. Open the inventory button prefab. Create a new image for the highlight. After you set it up, hide it. Good. Now open the button script. Create a serialized reference to the highlight image, so we will be able to interact with it from this script. And let's assign it in the editor. Now back to the script. Let's create a new public method called highlight, with bool as a parameter. Use this bool to set active hours highlight image. We need to call this method from somewhere to highlight button. Let's look at hours inventory button on pointer click callback implementation. As you can see right now, the inventory button itself is responsible for processing the click. If you click it, it tells to drag and drop controller that it is being clicked. Then it tells to inventory panel that it should update itself. We are making the button responsible for how it should react for being clicked. That will be fine, if not one small problem. Right now we want to make a toolbar. And when you click on toolbar, it should select this item, not start dragging it around. We can create a separate script for button and call it, let's say, toolbar item button. But functionality of this button will be kinda the same. It have pretty much everything the same as we have right now. There can be multiple solutions to this. If you're similar with polymorphism, first solution which come to mind is to create base inventory button and then make multiple different buttons which will inherit from this base button. But I don't like this solution because you will have multiple prefabs of the different buttons. Like you have an inventory button or storage item button or this tool build item button. But instead of doing this, we will be creating a context for the inventory button. It will be like, okay, this is the panel of inventory. This is the panel of tool build. So the panel will be responsible for processing the callback of a button being clicked. Create a new script called item panel. And let's copy inventory panel there to be used as a basis. Right now we don't need to change anything yet. We just need to add one new public virtual method called onClick, which will accept int id as a parameter. Good. Now remove the inventory panel script from the toolbar and create and add a new script called item toolbar panel. Open the newly created script. Inside inherit from the item panel. Because we inherited from inventory panel, if we launch the game right now, we will see that toolbar panel will show the buttons, but you can't carry stuff around. So now let's change the implementation of our buttons. Open inventory button. Now inside on pointer click, we just want to get item panel from parent object. Tell it that the button at this index is being clicked. Now go to Item Toolbar panel and inside first override the onClick. Serialized reference to the toolbar controller. Inside this onClick you want to describe everything what is going on when you click this button. Set the selected toolbar item to click button on the item toolbar. For that create and call a new method called set with passed parameter of ID. And in the toolbar controller assign the passed ID to the selected toolbar. Go back to the item toolbar panel and using ID pull the item button out of list of buttons and tell it to be highlighted. We will need to make button list public instead of just serialized field. Let's launch and test it. As you can see, it is highlighting the items, but not removing the highlight of previously selected buttons. Go back to the onClick implementation. We want to introduce a new method which will be responsible for highlighting the button and hiding the highlight on previous selected item. For this we will need a new integer variable which will be used to store currently highlighted tool. And when we renew the highlight, we first stop highlight on current tool, then highlight a new tool based on past parameter. Good. Now if you open the inventory and try to click around, it doesn't work. It is because we changed the implementation of inventory buttons but did not update the inventory panel for the new implementation. Open the inventory panel script. We already have all of this stuff implemented in item panel base class, so let's delete all this and just inherit from the item panel. Then similar to the toolbar panel override onClick. So call game manager drag and drop controller onClick. Make inventory public so we can access and pass it as a parameter. Then call show. Let's test this. Good, as you can see we made the same system as we used to have with the inventory. Back to the toolbar. You see, if I use my scroll wheel, it will not update the highlight. Open the toolbar controller and create a new public action with integer as a parameter. I will not be going into details about delegates in this episode, and if you don't know how they work, I recommend you checking out the official Unity tutorial on delegates. And if at some point I will be making a tutorial on delegates, I will post the link in the description and on the screen recommendation on top right. But here is the short version. We can subscribe methods to this delegate. And then when it is needed, you can invoke this delegate. And every subscribed method will fires up. After we are done scrolling, invoke the newly created delegate and pass the newly selected item. Good. Now in item toolbar panel, subscribe highlight method to the delegate in the toolbar controller on start. There is one small issue. By calling start here, we make it so the one from the parent isn't being called. So let's go back to item panel and put the initialization process into separate method. So we will be able to easily call this method. Then call it on the start in item panel and in item toolbar panel. Good. Now as you can see, no item is being highlighted at the start, but we know for sure it is the first item. Let's just simply call highlight on start to highlight it manually. Okay, we are left with one more problem to solve. If I rearrange items in our inventory, you can see that our toolbar doesn't change itself to reflect the newly arranged items in the inventory. In the Stardew Valley, when you open the inventory, it hides the toolbar panel. So let's do the same effect. Open the inventory panel controller and hide the toolbar when you open the inventory. Because how we designed our panels, it will automatically update itself after we open and close the inventory. As an exercise, I want to hear from you. Why is this happening? Why does our toolbar update itself after we close the inventory, but do not update itself if it is on the screen? Think about the answer and post or check it in the comments. Good, this is it for this episode. If you have any questions or any ideas about the code, please leave your comment below. If you are interested in seeing what will come out of this, please subscribe. If you want to support further, you can find my Patreon in the description. With the best regards, see you in the next episode.